Welcome back to my channel. I have another word for you guys today. And the word is kaurosh. And it means a fabricator of any material or an artisan. So this can be goldsmiths, blacksmiths, engravers, carpenters, craftsmen, and the like. So kaurosh designates the artisan who trains hands to shape wood, stone, metal, or precious gems. And in this context, it determines whether the craftsman's skill becomes an instrument of holy service or a tool for idolatry and national ruin. Now let's talk about the artisans appointed for a sacred service. So in the tabernacle, craftsmanship set the pattern. So to fashion the priestly shoulder stones, Moses was told to employ the work of an engraver, and we see this in Exodus 28, verse 11. Also, Bezaleel, son of Uri, worked as an engraver and designer and embroiderer, and we see this in Exodus 38, verse 23. And through these men, the Lord displayed that artistic excellence, when surrendered to his word, advances pure worship. Now, if we go into the shoulder stones, they're talking about the breastplate of, I believe, Urim and I can't remember the other name, but it has 12 stones on it that represent the 12 tribes of Israel. Number 2, temple building. Once again, Hiram of Tyre sent carpenters and stonemasons to David in 2 Samuel chapter 5, verse 11. And later, Hiram came to Solomon, who was a man endowed with skill, understanding, and knowledge to execute all kinds of work in bronze. And I believe we talked about Hiram earlier today on the channel. And we see this in 1 Kings chapter 7, verse 14, and 2 Chronicles chapter 2, verse 13 to 14. And we can see the visible testimony that God dignifies manual skill and weaves it into covenant history. Let's talk about national or nation building and royal projects. So Solomon's extensive works call for tens of thousands of artisans. And we see this in 1 Kings chapter 5, verse 18, and 2 Chronicles chapter 26, verse 15. Their labor supplied the economic backbone of the kingdom and mirrored the ordered wisdom that undergirded righteous rule. And when kings feared the Lord, who is the King of all kings, craftsmen prospered. But when their kings rebelled, their skill was misdirected. And if we go into craftsmen and idolatry, so kaurosh is often paired with molten or graven images. And in Deuteronomy chapter 27, verse 15, it says, "Cursed is the one who makes a carved or molten image, an abomination to the Lord, the work of the hands of a craftsman." And Isaiah exposes this futility in chapter 44, verse 12 to 13 of Isaiah. And it says, "The ironsmith works the iron and becomes hungry. The carpenter stretches a line." So we see here that both are ashamed together when the idol cannot speak. And we see this in Isaiah chapter 44, verse 11. Lastly, in Jeremiah the prophet states that their idols are the works of skilled men. And we see this in his chapter, which is 10, verse 9. And these also remind God's people that giftedness removed from obedience supplies apostasy. And now let's talk about the exile and the silence of the workshops. When King Nebuchadnezzar breached Jerusalem. He carried away all the craftsmen and smiths. So we see this in 2 Kings chapter 24, verse 14, chapter 24, verse 16, and Jeremiah chapter 24, verse 1, and chapter 29, verse 2. So Nebuchadnezzar is the same one that threw the 3 Hebrew boys into the furnace, and also had his dream interpreted by Daniel, who saw the writing on the wall. Now, the deportation of artisans was strategic. No skilled laborers meant no weapons and no rebuilding. Spiritually, the laws dramatized the nation's broken covenant. Their finest tools were seized because their hearts had first been taken captive by sin. And if we talk about restoration and rebuilding, after returning from exile, artisans again resurfaced. Ezra sought masons and carpenters and purchased cedar logs from Lebanon. We see this in his chapter, Ezra, chapter 3, verse 7. And Josiah's earlier reform had paid out the money to the carpenters and the builders. For temple repairs, which is 2 Chronicles chapter 34, verse 11 to 13. Each revival features not only prophetic preaching, but also hammer and chisel applied to the house of God, an illustration that genuine renewal addresses both the heart and the habitat. And the prophetic vision of the 4 craftsmen in Zechariah chapter 1, verse 20, it states that the Lord showed me 4 craftsmen. Following this vision, we see 4 horns that scattered Judah. The craftsman represents divinely raised agents who overthrow oppressive powers. And if we expand this vision, it signifies skillful God-sent forces that can dismantle evil structures just as surely as they can erect sanctuaries. Now, this passage assures the remnants that the God who once gifted Bezalel still equips instruments for his redemptive plan. The social and economic significance. So, in Israel's agrarian society, craftsmen occupied the middle tier. They don't own land as elites, and they're not subsistence farmers. And their presence in royal correspondence in 2 Samuel chapter 5, verse 11, military technology in 2 Chronicles chapter 26, verse 15, and urban planning in Nehemiah chapter 11, verse 35, displays an economy sensitive to both creativity and practical need. And the Bible never demeans manual labor, but casts craftsmanship as a conduit for covenant blessing or curse. We can also tie this into those who work in trade, and how some people might look down on those in the trades. But when we are in an economic downturn or a recession, those in the trades will always have work because it is based on a need. For example, HVAC technicians, electricians, welders, and the like. And of course, carpenters. Now, if we get into the implications and applications. So the craftsman theme reflects the creator who formed the heavens in Isaiah chapter 45, verse 18. Human artisans image God when their craft submits to his glory. We also see that skill and craftsmanship intersect. And we see this in Exodus 35, verse 31 to 35. Wisdom is not abstract, but tangible. And it shapes tabernacle curtains and bronze pillars. Lastly, we see that tools that are meant for holiness can be repurposed for idols. And this demonstrates the moral neutrality of skill and the necessity of a heart aligned to the law of God. Now, to apply this, we should encourage vocational stewardship as people of God, people of Allah. We should affirm artists, engineers, and tradespeople as exercising their God-given gifts, as I said previously. We should guard against idol making, so modern technology can become contemporary molten images. We must use discernment to accompany innovation. So, one huge example would be not making AI your God, as I believe we will soon see. Next, we should participate in church building and maintenance as acts of worship. And we can follow the precedent in Exodus, Kings, Ezra, and Nehemiah. Lastly, we should embrace exile lessons. Loss of skilled labor in judgment narratives warns churches not to presume upon gifted individuals. The Lord can remove or reassign them, just like the Lord can give and taketh away. So, lastly, we talk about the fulfillment in Christ and the church. So Jesus' father, his earthly father, was Joseph the carpenter, and he was a dignified craftsmanship by his incarnation. And we see this in Matthew chapter 13, verse 55. We also see believers are portrayed as God's workmanship in Ephesians chapter 2, verse 10. And we are seen as living stones in a spiritual temple in 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 5. Ultimately, the head artisan himself is the Lord our God, who has fashioned a redeemed people and finally the New Jerusalem. As we see in Revelation chapter 21, verse 18, that the city was pure gold, clear as glass, the flawless project of the divine artisan himself. And that is the end of my message. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. Stay upright, resist the devil, and he shall flee. Thank you guys for watching. I'll bid you adieu.